This isn't your soft launch. This is the hard launch, where we talk about what it takes to build love, businesses, and everything in between.
Welcome to The Hard Launch, the podcast where we connect the dots between technology and the wedding industry. I'm your host, Natasha, and today's guest is someone whose story I find genuinely fascinating because it starts not with a big idea, but with a very frustrating guest list in her notes app of her husband's iPhone. Hannah Roze is the founder and CEO of Plannerd, a modern wedding planning platform built to turn one of the most stressful experiences couples go through into something that actually feels fun and good. Hannah didn't come from the wedding industry. She came from tech. She was leading operations at Carta, the unicorn equity management startup, before she got engaged and found herself buried in spreadsheets, email chains, and disjointed planning tools that just didn't cut it. So she did what any great operator would do. She decided to build something better. She went back to business school, the University of Washington's Technology Management MBA program, and developed the vision for Plannerd and launched it. The platform has been featured in Martha Stewart weddings and has already attracted thousands of users. Hannah is building in a space that is deeply underserved by technology, and she is doing it as someone who thinks like an engineer and feels like a bride. That combination is rare. I'm really excited to get into it with her today. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a second to rate and review the podcast. It would mean the world. It really does help more people find the show. And make sure you're following so you never miss an episode, or hit subscribe on YouTube if that's where you're watching. Okay, let's get into it. Hannah, I am so excited to have you here today. It's time to hard launch. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, you've written about being 8 years old, designing wedding dresses with your cousin, and rehearsing your grand entrance for your wedding, imagining it since you were a little girl. When did you know that this was going to be the space that you were going to walk into professionally?
You know, I never could have anticipated that, even given that story of being little and dreaming about my wedding. But I think when it really came into focus and became real was when I was describing the issue that I was having and just hearing so many similar stories from other couples and wedding professionals saying, like, someone should go fix this. Someone needs to attack this problem. It's rampant, it's chronic, it's affecting people. 2.5 million people get married every year, and it seemed like this was just the rite of passage that everyone has to go through. And so many people said someone should build this, and then I kind of reflected and felt like, actually, I think that could be me. And I have a lot of the background and the focus and the experience to put all those things together, even from outside the wedding world, but just being ready to learn and ready to commit myself to this pain and helping to alleviate it. So really, that was the point when I realized this is going to be me and I'm ready to attack this problem.
If not you, then who, right? That's always been my saying. And I had a similar
Mhm.
experience as we were building Gia, because the more I shared my idea, and then even as we launched and started like putting the idea in people's hands, people were like, I literally was thinking about this as I was going through my wedding process, or like, this is
Mhm.
something that I've thought about because it was such a miserable process and miserable journey, or like there was so much pain in it, and they just wouldn't do it. And one of the problems is like out of sight, out of mind, because after the wedding day passes, you're sort of like, okay, well, it's not my problem anymore. But I had the similar thought of, well, but there's so many, it's not my problem anymore, but there's so many people that are experiencing the same problem every single day that are going through it behind us. And why, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when are we going to help the brides behind us and the couples behind us that are going through the same pain?
Yeah.
You went from a boutique marketing firm to a tutoring company and immediately then started reorganizing operations without even being asked. And that led you to leading a team at a large unicorn startup, Carta. We are a client of Carta's. We love Carta.
Yay.
What has been sort of like the through line for you in all of those jobs and professionally that you felt kind of has led you up to this point and jumping headfirst into the entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, that's a question I asked myself a lot over the journey when it was feeling like there wasn't one, that I was missing that through line. And it was really being able to look back when the dots kind of lined up. I think a lot of people have that experience where you realize that all the experiences leading up to that point had prepared you to operate at the level that you are now. And I think when I do look back, the through line is complex problem solving and taking chaos and making it into calm and organization. And I really did that in pretty much every single role that I was thrown into, whether it was at a startup or a well-established company. I was met with things that seemed unorganized, unstructured, and my go-to was, let's get organized here. Let's figure out what's our goal, what's our process, what are we doing, what are our systems. And now working within Plannered and building that for couples, I think that's exactly where my mindset is, and trying to take the chaos of wedding planning and make it into something that's both systematic but also flexible, because things come up and we want to be open and customizable for all the different directions that couples are taking it in, that it can fit to their specific unique thing that they're building. So organizing chaos and bringing a unique capability of everything is figure outable. We can do hard things. We can take something that seems really chaotic or it has never been done before. And at Carta, there was a lot of that where, the mandate was help build this team, or, trailblaze this thing that hasn't really quite been done before. And the attitude just had to be, let's figure it out. And I try to really bring that to everything that we do at Carta, or at Carta, at Planner. Let's figure it out. Let's, apply ourselves, and everything is figure outable.
I love that approach. And I think it's a misconception sometimes when people see that you have background coming from maybe larger corporate or larger organizations, but oftentimes, your story resonates with me because I hear this a lot and I experience this myself. You can operate in a larger organization, but very much so within smaller teams, and still have to be super scrappy, still have to really think through, like, how are we going to get to point A with, not a lot, or with what we have. And that is so transferable into the startup world. I also come from a or from a corporate background, and like sometimes when I tell people my background or where I came from, they're like, how did you end up here? But there
Mhm.
truly is always a through line. And like, whether that's you operated in a large organization, but within a smaller team and had to be, more process oriented, scrappy, all the things, or if there's some other reason that you kind of made the jumps, there truly is a through line. For me, I was noticing that like every jump that I would make, it was always purpose driven. And like, it was coming from like my own experience, because I went from like big tech to biotech to now building in the wedding industry and being a
Mhm.
founder. But it's always been because like there was a purpose for me. And I went into biotech because of a personal experience with, family and family illness. And then this experience moving into this space has also been very purposeful driven and like driven by
Mhm.
my own experience. And I find that that has been kind of my through line in how I move through my professional career. And, it almost sounds like, yes, yours is process driven and like organization, but you're also coming from like a purpose driven perspective as well.
Yeah. And I think when you have that connection to the problem, not only just motivated, but I mean, when I was just kind of getting the wheels going on investigating with Plannered, other founders or people who were a few chapters ahead of me would say, is this a problem that you want to think about every single day? Because if you feel like you're maybe going to burn out on it really fast, or you have this idea and there's energy, but then it kind of peters out. And I think at Carta, I was super energized by the problems we were solving, but I wasn't, jumping out of bed to attack the equity space. That's not like, I enjoyed the problem solving aspect, but the content in its purest form was not going to resonate with my innermost, desires and passions. And not to say that every job has to do that, but with weddings, I'm just so energized by the whole concept. And I think it hits different when you feel that pull, when you've experienced the pain and you know that you can help to solve it, and you've been really close to what that looks like, and being able to help flip that experience for those coming after you. I think it's a very different experience.
I couldn't agree more. And both you and I have kind of lived both sides of the coin. Like, we've lived in the side of like corporate and kind of maybe building somebody else's vision, right? But now we're like building our own. And I couldn't agree more. It truly hits differently. Like, the jumping out of bed part really resonates with me, because it's so no, even the hardest days, and there are hard days on this like entrepreneurial journey,
Mhm.
but even the hardest days, I'm like, I'm gonna get out. Like, I can do this, and I'm almost even like more fueled because I know I can get through those hard days. But like when I was in corporate, there wasn't that same pull. And I also was energized by like, I'm in a space, I was in biotech and I was helping, in a different way, and helping people from a very different place, but it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't hit the same when like the underlying passion isn't something that either you've lived or isn't like your own true, like the fire that's like fueling you every single day. But when you do go down this entrepreneurial journey, you have to be ready to do it for years. And I think that's also oftentimes not as widely spoken about. People have this misconception that like, oh, it'll be fast or it'll be like this quick win. And it truly is years. Like you have to be so passionate, and that passion has to run so deeply to be able to like wake up every day for years and years and get through the hard days and keep going. It's really interesting. What keeps you going on those hard days, which I'm sure you've had? How do
Yeah.
you get through them? What keeps you going? How do you get from the lows back into a high?
Yeah, I think the funny thing and the fun thing about this journey is that it's going to be a continual experience of this. And I think having been at a place like Carta makes me realize that that destination that you're searching for truly doesn't exist. And even though Carta had reached unicorn status, funding to round G with the biggest venture capital firms in the world and accumulating, users and customers, there's always going to be a next chapter and a next thing to strive for. And I think having seen what a very extreme version of that looks like, and to know that those people, those executives, that CEO is still striving, it makes me feel like I should really try as much as possible to enjoy the building journey and to recognize that we're still early days. We're a few years in, so it doesn't feel like we're early days, but there's so much more that I want us to accomplish in ways that I think we can continue adding value for our customers. And I think having in mind what that long-term vision is so motivating, knowing that we are just truly scratching the surface of how we can be impacting the wedding world and the people who are involved in it. So it keeps me motivated knowing that, we're in this beautiful journey together as a company and everyone who's working with it and our partners. And there's just so much more to come that it's like sometimes, you just lay in bed like, God, I just want to wake up and like work more on stuff. And it's hard to not get, you have to pace yourself because it's totally the classic corny saying of marathon, not a sprint. And, some days you accomplish a ton and other days you hit roadblocks, and just it's almost comforting knowing when you're in a low that you're about to be in a high, because it's always going to be like this. So no matter whether you're at the high or at the what feels like a low, you know that there's always going to be a next thing. So not getting too caught up in either state, not getting too, blown over by a huge crazy win that you're distracted, but not being so distraught when you feel like you're not making the progress that you want to. But I think the downside of that is like living in that middle ground, which can be a little bit numbing, and you want to be like, I want to experience the highs when they're there. So, we're striving entrepreneurial people who are always, knocking down the door. So how to be balanced but ambitious at the same time is kind of the constant struggle.
It is a constant struggle and truly such a hard balance to strike. I mean, I deal with it every day, but I love what you said because I think it's such good advice for entrepreneurs that are just entering the journey or thinking about entering it, and like truly understanding that if you're in a low, the next thing to come is a high, and you just have to push through it. And like, because there are going to be people that don't, and you're the one that pushes through, so you're the one that's going to get to keep going and get to experience that high. So I mean, that's how I think about it. Like, this is just a temporary phase, but it does then mean that you have to temper yourself on the highs, because you can't get swung too much in like either direction. I was listening to the Diary of a CEO podcast episode, and he was saying how like his biggest quality is that he doesn't swing too far in either direction, in any direction. Like, it takes a lot to swing him, right? Like, he won't experience any emotion in the extreme. He sort of always oscillates like in the middle. And it's really, I mean, I'm guilty of this. Like, when something good happens, I'm like, I want to just celebrate and like scream from the rooftops and take a minute. But like, you just have to like temper yourself, because the good is followed by something bad. The bad is followed by something good. And it's always up and down. And it's just, it takes a lot of resilience to like withstand that and stay within the middle ground and not kind of like it would be way too exhausting to swing back and forth.
Yeah, resilience is such a good word, and I don't think I would have picked that out as a trait that would be so necessary in this journey. I would think like courage, bravery, determination, and you have all that, but it's truly the resilient side of your personality. And sometimes you have to outsource that resilience when you are in a low moment and you're like, "Okay, partner, like you got to boost me up here cuz I'm
Yes.
I'm feeling low." So, resilience is so important.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I too lean on my partner for some of that because there are days where it just feels like you're in a vacuum doing it by yourself. But actually I want to ask you about that. How do you lean on how does the dynamic work with your husband and yourself? I think oftentimes this doesn't get talked about enough how much the partner sacrifices if one person is building and what that looks like and how that impacts the overall dynamic. And I think I myself didn't even realize going into this journey what that meant. But there truly is so much sacrifice from all sides. And what does that look like for you guys? And did you have those conversations before you started, or have you been sort of navigating it as you go?
Yeah, sometimes my husband and I will talk about this, and he's like the steady guy and I'm the all over person. And I think you take turns being the all over person and the steady person, but for the most part he has had the same job. He was an intern out of college and he's stayed there all the way through till now. And now he is a partner at the company and you know, one of the very few people in our friend group and in our kind of peer group who's been at the same company. So he's like Mr. Steady Eddie, knows what he's doing, really good at it. And I have had a zillion different jobs and a million different industries and, big companies, small companies, kind of all over the map. So emotionally, sometimes we are needing to lean on each other where I will give him big ideas and kind of zest it up a little bit. And I'm, pushing him to try something new or try on a different project. And he's the one that I can return to ask kind of those centering, regrounding questions about, recalibrating and bringing the priorities into focus and kind of coming back down to earth and knowing that this is my vision and it's all the way over here, but I still need to take that first step to get there. And this is the concrete path to getting there. So he has I always lean on him for his perspective. He's really good at helping, bring things back into view and into priority for me. So, but like you're mentioning about, did we anticipate any of that? I don't think we could have anticipated it because you just don't know what this journey is going to look like and how you will react to it. And when you're envisioning it and then you're in the mode. And I think staying nimble and realistic is a useful thing where he believes in what I'm building and what we're doing and how we're doing it. But when there are decisions that come up, we do make them together. Like there's a big conference. Let's talk about what it would mean for our family for me to go to it. And I'm not going to go to every single event because that's not going to work for us. My daughter is 1.5 and I'm not going to go to every single thing because it's just not going to work for us. So I'm going to be selective. We're going to talk about it together. And I really do like involving him in those discussions. So it's not me saying, I'm doing this, deal with it, because I wouldn't really enjoy that being said to me. So I like to bring it to the group, talk things through, and ultimately, come up with something that works for the family as a decision. But he's hugely supportive, and I absolutely could not do this without him. And also the broader support network of friends who have to listen to all the things about the company. Sometimes they ask to be polite. Sometimes they ask because they're curious. And I mean, you totally know where, it's your obsession. It fills your mind 24/7, and other people, it doesn't fill their mind 24/7. So you kind of have to live in this funny balance.
I couldn't relate to that more. First of all, I mean, my husband has a harder time escaping me yapping about my company all the time. Um, but I have to like stop myself, but I want his opinion. I respect his opinion. And I want to I want to lay out my entire day for him and be like, this is what happened. What do you think about this? Should I do this? Should we do that? What should I decide on here? But like, it can be a little bit overwhelming given it is
Mhm.
it's my everything, and it's not even his I mean, it's a lot for him, right? He's supportive and he is very involved, but it's not I mean, he has his own day job and his own things in his mind that he has to get done and do. So
Mhm.
there is a little bit of like a balance you have to like check yourself almost, and like especially with friends like you mentioned who are in like different life phases or who are going through totally different things and maybe, aren't in the entrepreneurial space or whatnot. For them, it's very hard to relate or understand, and they'll ask about it. And I could talk for hours. I mean, I could just go on, but I have to like temper my response and be like, things are going well. Here's like the high level, and then kind of like pull it back.
Yeah.
So I couldn't relate more. You've shared that you had an experience where you flew to New York for a final round interview. You didn't have any backup plan. You put all your eggs sort of in one basket, and that didn't work out. In that moment, how were you feeling, and how did that experience kind of shape the way that you throughout your professional career, but especially in this part of your journey, how you have dealt with rejection or failure or a no?
Mhm. Yeah. So the funny thing is that job was at NBC as an NBC page was what I wanted to be. I was obsessed with 30 Rock, wanted to be Kenneth the Page, and it was going to be my foot in the door to the broader like media world. But ultimately when I kind of reflect back on that experience is I don't think my why was strong enough. I think I could have had a much bigger, more meaningful driver behind that, and I really just thought that it was cool and that it was gonna be interesting and that it would lead to something that I could learn more about and just kinda be a sponge, which is great. You're supposed to be a sponge earlier on in your career, but I remember in some of those interviews, I was so well prepared to talk about a lot of different things, but when they would ask, "Why do you want this?" which is such a simple question, but I think my answer was really still forming, and that's probably why I didn't, go on to get the job, but, I went through, like, 5 rounds of interviews, and then the last one was at 30 Rock, and I ran into Maya Rudolph in the hallway, and I was like, "This is so surreal." But I think it was just redirection of life where, it wasn't meant for me, I wasn't meant to do that, and when I returned home after not getting that job, that's when I met my husband. So if I had gotten the job and moved to New York, we never would have met. We never would have, gone on to have the life that we have now. So it was sort of like this secret fork in the road that at the time I don't even think I was devastated or even that let down. It was sort of like, okay, next thing, on to the next. And I'm sort of proud of little Hannah for feeling that way and just letting it roll off my back. And I think I try to keep that attitude of perspective and, did I try my hardest to really know everything I wanted to say and all the answers and had I done all the research? I was like prepared enough. Could I have done more? Absolutely. So maybe that's fine if it wasn't meant for me. And then in that next interview there was that I had, for whatever next job, I knew that I need to have a much stronger why for this so that when I'm going to describe to these people and to myself what I'm looking for, that it can come from a place of, being true to myself and being authentic. So I think that why driver and being really in touch with that, especially in the entrepreneurial journey, knowing what that is and how it drives you, I think that's really everything.
Absolutely. I think that's what moving through these jumps or transitions in your career with purpose actually means, because I think maybe that was like a clear signal to you that like your purpose wasn't there, like you weren't moving into something that had purpose for you, and that pull just wouldn't have been there, right? Even if you did get it, you wouldn't have had the pull of like jumping out of bed every morning and like being excited to work on that thing. And I think like maybe that was also early signs of your resilience speaking through because of how you handled it, and like probably something you take with you even today.
Mhm.
How did the beginning of Plannered come to be? You've mentioned that it started with your own wedding planning journey. And take us back to, being in your notes app with your husband, writing that guest list, and, what happened between that moment to the point where you were like, okay, I'm going to start a company with this. Like now I'm going to really start building.
Yeah. So a funny thing, and I have never actually told this part of the story before, was when after we had our wedding, I was doing a referral call for our wedding planner. And I was speaking with a potential bride who wanted to work with her, and I had just Googled her name offhandedly, and she worked in the venture capital space. And I was kind of describing the process, and she was kind of, drilling and digging into like, was there a system? Was there a process? How did you keep things straight? And kind of what was the organizational method? And I was going to be fully honest with her that, the expertise was amazing, but off the record, I was a little bit inspired to take the organization to a next level. And I went on to kind of describe what I was thinking. And this, I hadn't even built a wireframe. I didn't have a mock up. I didn't have anything. It was just like purely up here. And I sort of described the concept to her. And she said, well, if you build that, let me know because that sounds awesome.
Oh my gosh, I feel like that's like so serendipitous. Like who would have thought that that would be the sequence of events?
It was so wild. And just to hear even one person say, great idea, you should do that, when, you hear from people and you're describing, and some people is really resonating and other people it's like, but could you 10, 20x, whatever, like it needs to blow up the world. It can't just solve like this one problem. And so for someone to validate it at that right moment and with her background, I I found a lot of validation from that one yes, and it carried me forward a little bit. But yeah, in that moment, I think seeing what Carta had done about a hub, a source of truth, bringing together diverse stakeholders around a single place to be the calm and the organization across what had historically been very disjointed and disconnected in the cap table space. I had seen that happen, and I had seen the difference it could make in, the operational ongoings and all these different people from different capacities around a shared initiative. And so having seen that premise work before, and then just all these parallels in our wedding planning process of all the different people needing the exact kind of information that they needed at that exact moment, but tailored to them and accessible and simple in a beautiful interface. That's what I really wanted to build. And having seen it once before was really a nice roadmap of sorts for me of what that could go on to be in the wedding context.
That is so fascinating, and what a story. I feel like that is a strong validation point, and the fact that that kind of happened is almost like a sign that you're like going in the right direction. So you were in your MBA program during the time that you started developing the vision for Planet. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and how much of the actual kind of company structure or strategy or like product came out of that time and what you were experiencing in business school, and how much since then has sort of changed or evolved? Like, we hear so much about companies pivoting or completely changing almost the product from where they started to where they are the day they launch. And so I'm curious, like, what was that at inception and how much of that has evolved? And is there sort of a reason that it happened during your time in business school? Was that sort of a strategic timing on your part, or was that just happenstance?
Yeah. So I think since we were getting married during that time and we were actively, planning, working with our wedding planner, and then in business school, having these ideas, I was basically taking two sets of notes for my classes. The normal notes that I was going to draw from for exams and tests and whatnot, and then the little findings that I was sort of earmarking for Planner, like, this is something I need to look into. This is a really interesting point, or this framework is super compelling. So I was really, you know, being inspired in the moment by these conversations. And we're going through tons of case studies and speaking with executives and going on company tours. And my mind was just like spinning about how we could build it and grow it and, what it could go on to be, but then also confronted with, okay, what is the absolute first step that I need to do to actually put this into motion? So the first thing that I knew I needed to do was find a technical partner, because my background, I've worked across the business, but I had never, I don't sit down and code or, design the product step by step on my own. So I needed someone who was going to be the total flip side of the coin to me. So I basically sat down at my little whiteboard in my office and I just wrote out a list of all the qualities I needed in a person. And then I went out into my network. I was like, this is what I need. It's this person or someone like this. And in that student mindset, people are so willing to help you in a way that I think is a lot harder on the other side because there's like a little bit of a novelty, and it's like, oh, look at this little student doing a fun project. And so I think people within the industry and lots of people want to help connect you. Networking works whenever, but the student aspect, even though it's business school, people especially want to help students. So I really tried to use that to my advantage and ask, as many different professors or ask my fellow peers and other students in my class. So I ended up connecting with someone who was a great friend of my study group member, who he had been roommates with in college and undergrad. And so we connected, and I realized that he had pretty much like every check mark from my list. He embodied
Wow.
like 95% of those things. So we kicked off together. Literally, he came over to my house and we're whiteboarding and drawing things out. And we slowly started to build our wireframes of what this could look like. So that was all during business school. And then shortly after I graduated, and then we brought on our development team and kind of went from there. So it was very much during school. And I remember this one kind of funny moment. I was playing around on Squarespace or something to try to build a little landing page to do, you know, early access, add your email, whatnot. And I had built this little landing page and I thought it was sort of cute. And I shifted my laptop over to my friend sitting next to me. I was like, what do you think of this? Isn't this cute? And I remember her face was just like, yeah, definitely. Like she thought it was the ugliest thing. It's like, okay, this is gonna be a long journey. I realized in that moment. So yeah.
I've had several moments like that. So you're not alone, but you think you have one thing in your head, but then like putting that actually out in the world and like on paper, one, it never looks exactly like you want it to in your head. And two, it's like
Mhm.
you could be totally off the mark from what other people want. It's just what you envision, right? So until you put
Mhm.
something out there. And I think that's also a big part of this journey is like you just don't know. And like you mentioned, what is the first step? Like the first step is truly just like validating your idea in any way, shape, or
Mhm.
form, but like with something that people can like wrap their minds around. Like just talking about it is almost not enough. Like I also went in about creating wireframes in a little bit of a different way, but like just something that I could show them, right? Or like
Yeah.
that they can envision. And then when we started actually development and developing the product, like in every part of that process, like just putting it in somebody's hands, even if it's not fully baked or it's, I don't have answers to everything. It's just, how do I get that in front of somebody else's eyes that are not mine so that like
Mhm.
I can get a reaction, whether it's good or bad? That's all great feedback, right?
Mhm.
So I'm curious, is that person still with you today? The one that started with you in school?
He is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
he's been
amazing.
a wonderful teammate and partner and someone to be there from the beginning, and to have continuity like that is pretty, I think rare, where he, has other things in the mix and then he helps with Planet on the side, and it's been really nice to be able to have that consistency, along the way.
I
Yeah.
think continuity is so key because every time that you change, specifically product development team members, I think, especially at the early stages, it could be such a setback. So I think the way you went about it is so smart because you really were very intentional about what qualities you were looking for. Sometimes people jump into relationships. I've made these types of mistakes too, but sometimes people jump into relationships, whether it's a product development person or whoever they're bringing on. And if you're not really clear at the early stages, that could be a huge setback because the
Mhm.
continuity just like suddenly gets, abruptly stops and you're having
Yeah.
to like completely almost start from scratch with somebody new who has no idea what's been built before. And as a non-technical person that's left behind, it becomes really difficult to like translate that to somebody new. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
And
think
when you're thinking about, bringing on the next person on such lean teams, I think every next hire that you have gives you questions that you wish you would have asked that person and that you
yes.
will involve in the next hiring process. And you have a little like mental list or side list of, okay, I didn't get into that area. Really should have. That was a key area that I didn't really realize. And now I'm going to ask this pointed question to the next person. I think that is something you grow and you learn as you bring on new team members. And so I feel like I was just extremely lucky with bringing him on early, and he's been so incredible. And if you're listening to this, hello.
Shout
But,
out.
yeah, shout out. But, you gotta, when the team is lean, everyone impacts the energy and the vibes. And, yeah, you have to be discerning.
Yes, absolutely. So when you guys launched, you launched with pretty well-known partnerships and a couple thousand users. How did you get those partnerships, or what did you do kind of behind the scenes pre-launch to decide on which partnerships you were going to go after, or in the early days, which integrations to kind of pursue first, and building those relationships up and getting to a point where you were confident that you were ready to launch with those partnerships and that user base?
Yeah, I think my mindset was always about being genuinely helpful and genuinely addressing the pain point. And so trying not to have a lot of fluffiness or things that were sort of nice to have here and there, but elements, attributes, features that could be truly hitting the pain and the need head on. So any partner that we've brought on has been, something that we've gone through full research and wanting to understand how this would truly improve the experience of our users and our community so that it can be truly impactful. And I think at the beginning it can be tempting to want to just jump in with anyone who will have you because you want to get names and momentum and things going. And I'm glad that we were able to be pretty discerning again with what partnerships we went into. And I think it also speaks to the need for a planning platform such as ours, that these long-standing wedding people and some other wedding startups, wanted to hear us out as a new kid on the block in the wedding world. And even though there are long-standing legacy sites, that we had a place in the conversation, and it was super motivating and energizing to know that, even in an industry that is, as tale as old as time, that there's room for innovation and there's room for things to be more efficient, more effective, and ultimately more enjoyable. And I think that's really what we try to hit on, is that it's a piece of your life. It's not your whole life. It's our whole life because we think about it every day. But our users, if we're doing our job right, they're coming in, they're using it super high quality, and then going about their day doing something else and not having to spend hours and hours and hours wedding planning. That we can be helpful, send them on their way to live the rest of their life and not have to have it as a part-time job. So partners that are really effective, really useful, and be a true added benefit to our community.
I think what you said is really a point to double down on, which is not saying yes to everything, and making sure that you're really where to say no, because it can be so tempting to just go with anybody that's giving you attention. It's like dating, truly. You
Hmm.
want to just go after anything in the beginning, and it feels flattering. It's like someone's giving you attention. They like what you're building. That validation is you're so hungry for that validation when you just set out. I mean, really anytime in the journey, but especially when you just set out. So I think being really thoughtful, really intentional about your partnerships is something that is only going to be beneficial as you grow, right? And taking it slow and really pacing yourself from that perspective. How have you guys thought about marketing as an early stage company? You've been quoted to say it's not if you build it they will come, it's if you market it they will come. And how have you thought about that in application to your marketing strategy and how you build brand awareness and get plannered in the hands of users?
Hmm. Yeah, a fellow founder said that to me a couple of years ago, and it just really stuck in my brain. And it's something that I think about constantly, pretty much. We are builder creator people, and it's so fun to be sitting with the designers, sitting with the engineers, going through mapping out the product requirements and going super drilling down into how the user experience will be and what this will look like. But ultimately, you could have the best product in the world, but if no one knows about it and it's not helping anyone, then you haven't done what you set out to do. So I think breaking into an industry like weddings is very difficult because it's so saturated with content, and the barrier to entry is relatively low. You can just jump in and start creating content and putting your name out there, which is, a great thing because that person could be me. But it's, a busy thing because someone can just put up a site and say that they do XYZ. So there's pros and cons, but I think being true to yourself and being true to what your product is solving for is what I've always tried to really stay true to, and not to get too distracted by all the opportunities or all the things. Like, one example, we get asked all the time, do you plan on having a vendor catalog where you have lists of photographers in all the states. And my answer is always, our bread and butter is wedding tools, project management, helping make the wedding planning process more enjoyable. And there are so many great places to get that. And once you're ready to buckle down and move from an idea to execution, that's where you come to us. And there's just so many different directions you can go in. So I think in our marketing and in our tool set and everything, I try to be really intentional and specific about this is what you can get from us. This is how your life will be so much easier and more enjoyable and more fun and more, realistic, and how you can get the job done that you have in front of you, and to not be, where it's possible, to not be fluffy, to just hit it on the nose about this is what we are and this is what you will gain from it.
I think that's so important. I recently got some really good advice, and it was pick one ICP and just go like focus, focus, focus. I mean, I think we hear this all the time as founders, but it's nothing revolutionary. But like, it truly is like, this is a space where you could get pulled in so many different directions. And like, we get the same thing that you guys are getting, which is like, will you be a marketplace, or will you be like will you help me with like, layouts or project management or design? Like, but no, we are just this. We are this, and we are this for this audience. And maybe there is a byproduct somewhere down the line where we then become something else for someone else. But truly, it's like staying focused in these early days and like being one thing for one person, and not just getting like spread thin across like so many different ICPs or customer profiles or so many different types of tools. Why do you think that the wedding industry, though, so it is a space that has not really moved or kind of been entrenched in innovation for quite some time, being a founder in this space, why do you think that it stayed in like so much of the sameness for so long? And is it a lack of appetite? Is it a lack of sort of capital or investment in this industry? What do you think that it is that has made this space feel overlooked?
Yeah, it's interesting. Over the past 2 summers ago, I was shadowing one of our wedding planning partners for a couple of her events, and I would go to weddings with her, and I would wear the outfit and like help put out place cards. And I just wanted to be like boots on the ground with her to see what does it look like to do this. Different from being a guest, which I've been to a million weddings as a guest, but to be there with the wedding planner, totally different. And the entanglement of, humans and technology. Wedding planners are out there with their team putting menus on a table. They are out there setting out chairs and directing people and talking to vendors. And that's all very much a hands-on human job. So being there with her and seeing what it took to arrange the flowers that she had designed and brought herself, and being there at the tables, my mind is thinking, how can my technology help her to do what a human does best, so that she doesn't have to think about things that are admin heavy or repetitive, or something that could be systematized? You don't have to go back and create the same document over and over again, or you go to this template and it's just ready to go for you, so you save an hour of updating it. But no one is going to AI is not taking the role of laying out a menu on a tablescape. That is going to be a human job. It's going to be something, maybe a robot could do it. Maybe a robot could put their menu on the table. Maybe that will happen.
There are robot arms making coffees now at the airport, so you never know.
But I think what contributes to it is just how much of the wedding journey has to be human led, and a lot of that is not likely going anywhere anytime soon. So anything that we're building, at least, I try to be very strict about, is this actually helpful for someone, or is it just cool from a product standpoint? Like, it's cool that we could do this, but is a human going to use it? And I don't think we're in the place of wedding planning where people want to type in their wedding and then it just gets like AI plans the entire thing. I don't think we're in that place. And the things that we can do, I believe, are help with the little actions that make it more effective, more enjoyable, better powered, so that you can do your human job better. And I think that has a lot of reason behind, where the innovations lie in the industry. Another aspect that comes to mind is just the the age spread of people involved in the industry, where, Gen Z couples are coming up through the ranks to being the couples getting married, but their wedding planner might be in their 60s and their parents are involved. And there's needing to be a lot of bridging of generations in this process. It's not just, this generation in a vacuum being involved in the process. So there's a lot of different aptitudes involved all at one time. And I think that can impact the speed of innovation where you're trying to appeal to a very large swath of people.
I completely agree. And I think like one thing that is interesting is, the people that are hesitant about like technology or innovation in this space, sometimes given the fact that maybe maybe because of that age spread, or maybe because of the fact that like this industry just hasn't seen a lot of innovation, it truly is not because it's there to replace them. It's to up-level them, to actually get them to operate at a higher standard and to be able to increase the value of what they actually do best, which is the creative, and which is the hands-on tangible things that technology will never replace. And I think anybody that says that like, and this is like my hot take, but like anybody that says that AI or like technology is going to replace the human side, I think like this industry is truly the proof of the fact that like that will not happen. It is truly making planners and the creatives more valuable, because now they can take the stuff that they don't want to deal with, or don't have time for, off of their plate, and operate at such a more higher level. And the value of their creative skills are so much more impactful and valuable, because they can focus on that and do that 10x better, and with 10x more focus and time. So I think like this industry is prime for innovation, in that it is a space that is due for it, but also all stakeholders will kind of benefit from it, because the whole industry will kind of up level from that.
Mm-hmm.
You've said that there was a moment where you felt like you were sort of officially stepping into entrepreneurship and feeling like an entrepreneur, because you realize that like the problem is not just you, right? It's bigger than you, and it's a beyond you. What does it feel like now, seeing your product and what you've built in the hands of actual couples and users and customers using your platform? How have you sort of like stepped into the role of a founder and of an entrepreneur? And has that changed or evolved now that you have customers using and you're sort of on the other side of that journey, or that part of the journey, I should say?
Yeah, I think the mental shift from I'm dabbling in this, I'm just exploring it, seeing if it has legs, that's a very safe place to be, because you are like halfway in. You're just like, I'm seeing if it's working, but if it doesn't work, totally fine. I'll just leave and do something else. I didn't put my back into it or anything, so I'm not setting myself up to be let down if it doesn't work. But there was definitely a moment, and I don't think it was one distinct like aha moment where this happened. It was sort of over time realizing that I'm all in on this, and I'm fully doing it. Like, this is what I'm doing. Um it might have even come earlier than I would have thought, now that I'm kind of thinking about it. Before we even on that phone call with the VC where she was saying, if you build this, let me know. I do remember a conversation with my husband after that, thinking and saying out loud to him, maybe I'm actually going to do this, where it had been a full on pipe dream, and to actually jump off the diving board and give it a go is so scary, because you're putting yourself out there, and it's safe in the crowd. It's safe where you're not trying, and it's safe when people don't see you taking a risk, but that's not how I'm built. So I'm a stick my neck out kind of person, and that means that the stakes are high, but the payout is high, and the fulfillment and the satisfaction that you can get from it is very real. And I've definitely realized over this journey that I'm not a lone wolf type of person. I really enjoy the team aspect of it, and I think it made it more real when there were other people who were as invested about it as I was, and being able to have a conversation about something and to see someone like get a little heated or get excited about it, or be frustrated when a user saw a bug and they were mad that they even encountered it. And to see someone else get super excited or worked up about something it made me realize that we're in this together. We feel strongly. There's ownership here across the board from all the people helping work to make this thing real. And so those were some of the things that helped to kind of shift that mindset for me. But, you know, like I said at the beginning, the goalpost is so easy to move. Just, you accomplish something, you're like, okay, next. You get somewhere and you're like, next. So I'm really trying to just like have goals, but be psyched about where we are and then, keep adjusting as we go. But, there's a long road ahead that I'm very excited to go after.
I think that's, yeah, I think, you kind of described the journey really well. And, the fact that there is a moment where you feel like, okay, people are in this with you, and that is so validating. And I've had that experience as well, where, team members will say, will get like really into the discussion, or like will kind of challenge me or whatnot. And it feels like if they can get this excited about the problem that I literally wake up every day and like thinking about and think about in my dreams and at night, then like, okay, we're actually like onto something, right? Like this is truly something that can be bigger than all of us. And it is a shift in mentality. Like now you're stepping into a founder and kind of a leadership role instead of sort of like dabbling in it, or it's like a side project. And I think, I went through the same shift, and I was kind of starting to think about this while I was still working full time. And then when I quit my job and went all in and started building and like built a team and like, put my back into it, like financially and mentally, right? Like that is terrifying. Like the risk is so huge, but the risk for me of not trying felt a lot scarier and a lot greater. But I really think like one of the most vulnerable things is like building something and putting that into someone else's hands and seeing how they react, because
Mhm.
it's like you're just giving away what you see in your head and like your imagination and your vision, and like you're giving people a glimpse into your mind, and it could go really well or it could go terribly. And you have to like stand there and take that as feedback, because truly all of that is data points and feedback, and you have to know how to be resilient and pivot. But it's so vulnerable and it's so terrifying, and it's so,
Yeah.
you feel like you're just giving, your insides to somebody to like react to and respond to. And it's a very vulnerable position to be in, but truly no reward happens without that level of risk. And I mean, I'm also not built in the way where I stay kind of in the safe zone, but you really have to be prepared to like, yeah, just push through whatever comes your way.
Mhm.
Okay, last couple questions because I know we're almost at time. You're raising a daughter now. I really want to touch on this before you go. You're building a company, you're working from home, you're also now a mom. What does your actual day to day look like, and how are you balancing it? Because I don't think there's ever truly a balance. But
Mhm.
what are some of like, what are the moments where it feels the most challenging, and how do you get through those moments to be able to build both a company and grow your family?
Yeah, it's such an ongoing thing, and just as you feel like you figured it out, something changes. You're like, "Okay, let me find a new way to do this." I think the parts when it's the most hard is when you wake up in the morning and our nanny went out of her way to find this super cool music class for our daughter down the street, and she was describing to me how the class was and all these songs, and it's like, "I wanna go to the music class. I wanna be the one to do the fun stuff and not just do the feeding dinner in the nighttime thing. Like, I want to do the fun daytime activities." So I was talking to her just this morning and saying, one of these days I'm going to block off my calendar and I'm going to take her to the music class, and you can like grab some groceries or something. So I think carving out time where you can to identify what it is that you want to do and then making time to do it is everything, and trying to be intentional. But I mean, this is hard, and feeling like there's not an easy place that you're striving for. I think relieving myself of that pressure of, once I figure it out, it will be easy, or once I figure it out, it will feel like this flowing natural existence. That's just not real life. And I think recognizing that it is challenging, and it's still going to be challenging and rewarding at the same time, and just living in that constant state of change is kind of comforting to let go. So I try not to be like to cling too tightly to much and just kind of flow with things. And, sometimes I wake up and I'm with her and our, childcare is later that day, and I'll take a meeting with the video call off while I'm feeding her oatmeal, and sometimes that's just how how it goes. So, being flexible and kind of doing what you can and giving yourself lots of grace. Um, it's challenging. I'm curious your thoughts on, what that balance looks like. You have two, I have one.
The
Um,
balance is not real and the challenges just evolve. And I too just make it work. I mean, I will sometimes be in the middle of a demo with a customer. And if my kids are homesick that day, then they will come flying through the background into my office. And they're at the age where I can't lock them out of, I mean, we have locks on the doors, but they could be screaming at the door, even if it's locked, like someone will hear them. Eventually they'll find a way in. So it is challenging. The challenges evolve. And I think like, we have to give ourselves grace. And also, I think we are stepping up into a place where we're showing that it's possible. And women that are choosing to have kids, if you don't, that's also great and fine. But if you do choose to grow your family, it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice pursuing your dream and like growing a vision that you have professionally. And I mean, I just treat this as my third child. And for me, like if people can have three children, I have three children. I have two physical ones and I have a company and that's three kids, right? So if I can do that, like it's like anybody else with three kids. So, but it's never perfect. It's messy and I don't think we show the messiness of it enough. I try to shine light on it in any ways that I can, whether it's through content or conversations like this, but it's truly challenging and I have the guilt of missing out on things. I have the guilt of I think about work or I think about my company while I'm with them sometimes, and that's really hard. And I try to create barriers. I also have specific times where I want to be with them. Dinner is one of those times. Like I'm not on my phone, I'm not on anything. And but that means when they go to bed, I am working till late into the night because I'm compensating for that time that I couldn't work in the evening or late afternoon. So there's trade-offs for sure. And I am not necessarily well rested most days, but you just have to like make it work. And if you're committed to both dreams, then
yeah.
you make it work even through the messiness of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something else I've tried to do is not exclude talking about her at work or with my teammates, and to encourage
Yes.
people to bring their whole authentic selves to work.
Yes.
And if I can't go to a meeting because she's sick, I'm going to say, I can't come to this meeting because my daughter is sick. I'm not going to say, not making it today, and like not give that context. And I encourage our teammates to be, realistic to or open to the point that they feel comfortable. But I think there's a tendency in other places I've been to pretend like you don't
Mhm.
have anything outside of work, to pretend like,
Yes.
that doesn't exist. And there's some environments where I'm sure that's necessary, and I'm just electing not to create that environment where I operate.
I am wholeheartedly on the same page. I used to get, because I came from biotech where it was an environment where you have to pretend like you don't have kids. I literally went into this journey and I would like freak out if one of them would be in the background of the camera, or if like I had to figure out how to feed one while a meeting was starting. Like I would have like anxiety and like sweat. And now I'm like, they walked in. Sorry, my kid's in the background. They walked in, they're humming a song. You might hear them, but like, let's go on with this demo, right? Like, I don't react as if it's a big deal. And I truly feel like the other person on the other side of the screen doesn't react like it's a big deal either if I manage it in that way.
Mhm.
Because it's normal. Like, I mean, it should be
Yeah.
normal. And I think we are the generation of, I don't know, female founders that hopefully normalize this. But I also try to make a really conscious effort to make it feel normal because I have two kids and I'm building a company, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
COVID did a lot for that
Yes.
humanizing factor where we were all in our homes and now working from home. And just, that video that came out of that man on TV, like BBC, and his wife walks by and she's tracing after one of her children and the other one's in the
Yes.
background. It became a huge news story, like, man has wife and children. They were in the house at the same time as him. Like, it became a whole thing. If that story had come out, 2 years later in the depths of COVID, even further into COVID, I think it wouldn't even have been a story because,
Oh, yeah, because
people
it's
have their
normal.
families around. And
What
so
are
that's
you
a
gonna do?
positive that comes out of, the work from home lifestyle.
Yes, I totally agree. There are pros and cons, but I think normalizing it is only beneficial for everyone.
Mhm.
I know we're at time, a little over time, but thank you so much for coming on, Hannah. I could keep talking to you for hours, and I have so many more questions that we didn't get to, but you'll just have to come back. And thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed hearing about your journey.
Thank you so much, Natasha. I
Thank
loved it.
you.